I think problems could be different between developing world and developed world. And as for the developed worlds, probably more senior people populations will increase, and the less birth rate may lead to decrease of populations. And Japan, that is my country, could be the one of the leading countries where the population decrease has already started. And how to deal with the mobility or accessibility for senior peoples is quite important issues, and also how to increase economic growth even under the population decrease may be the important issues. And in that sense, I think that transportation could take an important role to support, to solve these problems. That is not only the Japanese case, but I think most developed countries will also follow in the near future. Therefore, we should tackle together for such problems. That is for the developed countries. But as for the developing countries, I think still they are in the process of growing in economy and populations, and more and more megacities will be expected to emerge. Therefore, how to handle such a very big populated cities, including the problem of traffic congestions and lack of transportation facilities, infrastructures, under the still low or middle income levels. So I think the international collaborations for developing the sustainable urban areas with the sustainable transportation system, that could be the very major issues for developing world. So I think the different two types of problems coexist in the world, and we should discuss together by sharing the knowledge from the leading countries to followers. I think that is important issues. Yes, as I told you, the transportation problem is very closely related to more wider societal or social problems. And the transportation researchers or planners or maybe policymakers sometimes focuses on just the transportations. But the transportation is just a part of a whole world. Therefore, even if we think about the transportation problems, we need to cover a more wider scope, and probably we should highlight more people's activities or the social issues rather than just the transportation issues. That could be the important policy issues for transportation researchers and transportation policymakers. Actually, this is first time to come to Korea in I think 10 years or something. So I found several differences and also the not different points in the transportation systems. But what I found this time again is a very convenient transportation system. Particularly, I found a very good connection between the airport to the city centers. I heard Korean government has invested multiple rail routes connecting the airport to the city centers. I think that could be a very big difference and a very good experience for me. But at the same time, as one of the visitors from the outside of Korea, I found, for example, the difficulties in connections at the rail stations or the public transportations, one platform to the other railway station platforms. I was forced to walk quite a long minutes. And sometimes stairs are not installed with elevator or difficult to find the lift. Probably Korea will also come into the quite similar situation to Japan, where the senior people will be dominant in the populations. And for such handicapped peoples or the people who have a difficulty to walk, I think such a physical barrier could be the very important issues. So I think more investments or the more highlight should be made on senior societies' transportation systems. That is my impressions.
I think the seminar has already given very important and very prominent answers to these questions. One of the major developments is that we will see an accelerated urbanization in the developing world. There will be an unprecedented increase in the growth of cities, and this is something that will provide a major challenge for transport policies to keep these huge growing cities functional and deliver the goods that they are expected to provide. In the rich countries, we will see to some extent the opposite problem, that there will be an aging population and that we will see in some of the developed countries a decline of the population, which then poses the challenge for transport policy on how to adapt the capacities that already exist. So I think the main challenges will happen in urban areas, and they will be different in rich countries and in poor countries. I think that there is a common thread to these different contexts, that is to keep all of the society included in the processes that will happen. That we have policies in general and transport policies in particular that will allow the new migrants to the cities to be included in the economic processes that will happen and that are expected to generate the benefits of cities, the agglomeration economies. In the rich countries, we will see a growing share of elderly population, and there is the challenge of how to take care of them, how to keep them involved in social life, and also to some extent how to keep them productive, because we will work towards higher ages than we do now before we will retire. And there is also a challenge for transport policies to keep the elder population mobile and contribute to the social life in the rich countries in the face of declining society, declining populations of cities. No, I mean, we have already researched jointly, the World Bank and KOTI, the transport policy, the history of transport policy of Korea. And to us, frankly, it is a role model for many other countries. We see that after an enormous economic growth over the last 30, 40 years, Korea has become rich, and still it has still remained very energy efficient. It has avoided that with the growth you need a lot of energy resources in transportation, and this is the particular aspect of it is the superb organization of the urban transport in Seoul. It is an objective for us to maintain a high share of mass transit and public transport in other countries of the world, as you have achieved it in Seoul. I think if other countries tend to follow the richest countries of the world in the development of their transport policies and their transport systems, and we try to convince them with the example of Korea, because we think that this is much more akin to the future than what we see in North America or even in Europe.
There's many things happening at the same time. Certainly, we have had in the last decades an increase in trade across the world, and with it, many people in many countries have come out of poverty. So this is very important. You have important parts of the world with significant increases in gross domestic product, but at the same time, you also have a bigger gap between the rich and the poor in most societies, both in the developed and the developing world. Together with that, you have all over the world an increase in urbanization, and then differently according to the level of development of the countries. The richer countries are getting old in population very quickly, and the less developed countries still have very, very young population, and in many parts of the world it's growing very quickly. So you have, on the demographics, you have very different trends. On the economics, you have relatively similar trends with an increase in wealth on the developing world, some reduction or slower growth in the developed world, but also in both cases an increasing difference between the rich and the poor. Those are from the socioeconomic point of view, those are the more important questions. But then you also have a lot of changes that will be coming from the technological development, and those are first and foremost the penetration of information and communication technologies, which is going very fast in all countries of the world, almost irrespective of the level of economic development. The solutions that are penetrating are not exactly the same. So in the richer countries you have more sophistication, but all over the world you have a very, very strong penetration of mobile phones, and I suspect that the more sophisticated the smartphones and all the rest of the integration will come with a few years of lag, but will still come on those countries. And so these are the external factors to transport which are most compelling to demand adaptations in transport policies. It's like this. Transport is today responsible for very significant social and environmental costs. You have problems of congestion, but you also have problems of social exclusion because transport is not being able to address the mobility and access needs of the poorer parts of society. You have significant problems of road safety. Too many people die on the roads or have severe impairments for all their life. And these are the social parts. On the environment, we still have significant aggressions with pollutants and very significant emissions of carbon dioxide. So those are the problems that have to be tackled on the social and environmental side. And for that, technology can give a hand, both the technology of ICT, but also the technologies of propulsion of the vehicles. I believe ICT is more ready to start being applied, and big gains can be made there, but also there are gains to be made on the evolution of the internal combustion engine, but also on the penetration of other solutions more based on electricity. The policies have to be addressing a lot of these objectives at the same time, under a scenario of some uncertainty related to the time it will take for this technology of propulsion to come to a mature state where they will be competitive. So I think we have to start by addressing the needs of the poor people, and that means we have to change the paradigm from providing quicker mobility to providing better access to all. That's a very important thing. And then to try to get to the improvement of our environmental balance by taking advantage of the technologies that are more immediately available, and those are the technology of information communication. So I believe we should not be waiting for the totally clean car to start doing things. There are things we can do immediately to improve the quality of public transport, to start putting together better solutions of shared vehicles and shared rides in vehicles, because with those you can diminish the number of vehicle kilometers, you can improve the accessibility of all the population to public transport, and so hopefully start building a coherent package that will evolve over time in sync with the evolution of the propulsion technologies. But you can start immediately with the other things. Let me put it so. I think Korea has a few things which are very impressive. The first one is immediately obvious, is that you have a rather young vehicle fleet. Cars are very modern. You also have a very performing public transport system. Something you don't see by walking the roads, but you see when you look at the numbers, is that Korea also has a very bad road safety record. And it also has very high congestion in the cities. So I would say we should be trying to tackle congestion. From congestion you attack pollution, and for those using ICT you can have the same thing. But in parallel, I would say a radical rethink of the whole road system in Korea has to be done to try to improve its dramatically bad road safety record. So those are the main directions where you have to go.
Thank you for your About transport policy, I think there are lots of successful experience around the world. Like this policy we are discussing in the KOTI ITF seminar. Actually, I believe KOTI has a very good study and practice in information communication technology, and I'm also impressed in Seoul urban public transportation reform. Although it has a long history, maybe 4 decades. Today I will give an example from Beijing. Since 2008, Beijing Olympic Games, Beijing government has issued lots of car use and ownership policies. Like you just drive off a work day in a week. For another policy, people have to take a lottery for a car license plate. I think these 2 policies is very important for Beijing. Although it's not the best, one of the best policy, but it's surely decrease the growth of private car, and now based on the data, we can say it really improved the traffic conditions now. Thank you.